Hello. This meeting of the Bellevue School District Board of Directors is now called to order for February 6, 2025. And we are going to start with roll call.
Phil Block.
Carolyn Watson,
Cindy Rogan.
Monica Webster.
Jay Norris.
Kelly Aramaki.
and now please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. We don't have a student today, unfortunately. I guess you can imagine with the weather and so forth.
All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. All right. Next we have the land acknowledgement. If we could have the slide. Because I don't have it memorized. Okay. We acknowledge that we are on the indigenous land of the Coast Salish peoples, who include the Duwamish, Muckleshoot, and Snoqualmie peoples. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial. We reflect on the historic context that brings us to reside on this land and accept responsibility to interrupt erasure. We commit to an ongoing partnership with the Snoqualmie tribe as we listen to, learn from, and lead with their guidance. Okay, now we're on to the acknowledgements. Oh, wow, we have a bunch. Okay, this is Black History Month, and it is also Career and Technical Education Month. The 1st of February was National Freedom Day. The 3rd through the 7th is National School Counseling Week. The 4th is Rosa Parks Day. The 12th will be the Lantern Festival. The 14th is Valentine's Day. The 17th is the National PTSA Founders Day. The 17th is also President's Day. The 24th through 28th is Public Schools Weeks. The 25th is Ayam Iha Intercalary Days. The 25th is Maha Shrivaratri, the Festival of Lord Shiva. The 28th is the 19-day fast, and the 28th is also the beginning of Ramadan. Okay, so now we're on to approval of the agenda for this meeting. Can I have a motion?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion is approved. Now we're on to the consent agenda. I guess I'll move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a second. Is there any discussion of that? No? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion is approved. Okay, next, we're on to superintendent updates.
All right, great. I just want to give people a moment to appreciate the slide that I put together with all the snowflakes. It's not just a random winter slide, by the way. This week has been all about snow and 2-hour delays and canceling school. I can't say that it's the favorite part of this job that I have, but when there's inclement weather, I get to wake up at 3, 4 in the morning, and then along with my whole transportation crew, and they go out and start driving the city. And so this week I went with them and drove all over Bellevue each day just to see if it was safe enough for our kids, our families, and for our staff. The day that we closed Somerset, I was driving up Somerset, and it was really slippery. And so I just want the community to know that, I take that responsibility really seriously. It is a very challenging part of the job because everybody has a lot of opinions about whether we should close school or not. And I think one thing I'll just say is there are a lot of things that go into decision making. One of them is just whether the conditions are safe enough for people to get to and from school in Bellevue. But the other thing is that I do think a lot about the staff, because our staff, the majority of them do not live in the city of Bellevue. they come from all over the place, north, south, from Seattle and so on. And so I have to take into consideration the safety of staff coming in as well. And so I know that just from the emails that I received from some folks that people might have made different decisions, but I did my very best to try to take into account the safety of students as well as the safety of staff. And so hopefully we were able to make it through okay this week. I just put up some really beautiful pictures. I mean, the snow, uh, as painful as it is to have to deal with closures and things like that, I hope that kids had a wonderful time and that people got to appreciate the beauty. That top left picture I was driving to Clyde Hill this morning because the north end got more snow this time today than the south end did, which was different this week. It also shows just how different the weather patterns are. But as I'm driving up towards Clyde Hill and Chinook, I mean, it's just this gorgeous rainbow up in the sky. And so and then a picture of our crew that are out there sanding and plowing. A few years ago, we bought those kind of plowing attachments that you can put on the trucks, and they were just clearing out all of the parking lots. And so thank you to our operations, maintenance facilities crews who are out there making things safe. And thank you to our transportation folks. One thing that I learned this week is our bus drivers, regardless of whether we start on time or not, they get to work at their start time. So they are on the road by 5:30 to get to work. Many of them come from very, very far away. And so they're the first ones to be able to tell us whether it's safe enough to get to school or not. And I just appreciate them. Even on a 2-hour delay, they have to get there on time because they've got to get the chains ready, get their buses ready. And so just a shout out to our bus drivers for their hard work, especially during crazy weather. So the other thing I'll just mention is we're trying to improve our communication to the community. We're trying our best to communicate prior to the day of, because I think people appreciate when they have at least the day before to plan. There was one night where we sent out communication around 10 or 11, and I apologize for that, but it didn't start snowing till 8. I was kind of hoping that it would end. Anyways, that could go on forever. But the bottom line is we're trying our best to communicate well with the community. We don't always get it right, but I wanted people to know that we do really think about it when we make those decisions. Black History Month this month, and it is a wild time in the school district and in our country. And so what I'd like to say is in the Bellevue School District, we celebrate Black History Month, and we're very proud of that. And this is a picture of Ruby Bridges. Many people know this picture. It's the first African-American Black student to go to an all-white school. And this picture resonates with me always, but particularly this year, because it just reminds me that in the history of public education, there have been so many terrible things done to people of color in general, but especially to our Black community. But we have in our history, our Black history in public education, unbelievable courage and resilience, perseverance, and faith. And our community has been through very challenging times and oppressive times in the past. And I think it shows us that we can be courageous in the present and into the future. So I just want to say that we celebrate Black History Month here in the Bellevue School District. We have incredible Black student unions who are leading the way, and I just want to honor them as well. The 2025 legislative session is underway. We are down there all the time advocating for bills. There's a couple of special education bills that would bring us $10 million annually. There's a few MSOC bills that are there that we're following, transportation bill, and then there's a couple of levy and LEA bills that are dropping. And so I just want to kind of bring this to the attention of our community that there's some really important bills that are happening. Please stay engaged, follow along. These bills, if passed, could make a huge difference for us as a district, as I will talk about later today. And then I think this is my final slide, but today at this board meeting, I'm going to be presenting to the school board my spending reduction plan proposal for next year. And I'm going to talk about the path forward to cut $20 million out of our general budget this coming year. And so that will happen during board business.
Thank you. Now it's time. I'm going to ask Chief of Staff John Harrison to lead us through the public comment guideline process. And to start out, I'll read or summarize these guidelines, and then he'll introduce who's going to speak. I think we have a few speakers tonight. So we're grateful for public comment, and we like the input of the community, because our meetings would run forever if we have to limit it to 20 minutes per meeting. So if each person could just take 2 minutes, and then please use only the time that you need, and it will be on the official record. And so then the guidelines are the same standard of civility that we impose on ourselves as a school board. And we just want to make sure that there's not anything that's libelous or slanderous, an unwarranted invasion of privacy, anything obscene or indecent pursuant to the Federal Communications Act or any rule of the Federal Communications Commission, anything that would violate school policy or procedure related to harassment, intimidation, bullying, or discrimination, anything that would incite an unlawful act on school premises or violate a lawful school regulation, or anything that would create a material or substantial disruption of the orderly operation of the board meeting. So that's the major guidelines. And we just want to remind you also that we have an email address, which is board@bsd405.org. And so if you have any further comments that you couldn't fit in right now, you can certainly email those to us. Thank you.
Thank you, President Watson. We're going to do something a little bit unusual. The young man to my right here is Quentin Hemphill. He's a senior at Sammamish. He was supposed to be our student presenter earlier. He got here a bit late, but the impressive part is he ran here
Oh,
from Sammamish. So I thought, this dude is committed. So
Yeah.
I would love for you to give him the opportunity to address you before we begin the public comment phase.
We'd like to hear you. So this will be the time that you get to tell us whatever it is that you ran here to tell us.
Thank you so much for allowing me to be here with you guys. I'm so excited. My name is Quentin, as you guys already know. I'm a 12th grader, and I want to come here to talk about a couple things that are important to me, and that's family and art. So growing up, my family was my foundation. They taught me resilience, creativity, and the importance of staying true to myself. Educating myself and the importance of God was on one's character. My brothers were truly inspiring me. They taught me many things, like everything. Each of them was unique and driven in their own way. And they taught me to educate myself, and that I can be anything that I want to be. I can be better than who I am today and be the greatest man to ever live one day. One of the biggest lessons that I've learned from them is the importance of legacy and its importance to leave something for another generation. I came from a long line of businessmen and women, a long line of military men and women, and yet I have no legacy, nothing to make me proud of what my legacy is. It's the proud one. Oh, excuse me, I messed up. It's important to be proud of one's legacy and where they come from, their family, their ancestors. And I think that's one of the things that is missing from the Black experience as a young child, as a young kid. I want to leave something to be proud of for my grandkids and my kids and generations after me. Now, art. If my family is my foundation, then art is my expression. Art was the way I left the room and I explored the world, how I became a different person, so to speak. It allowed me to choose any path that I wanted to take. It allowed me to become whoever I wanted to be. And it was very important in my childhood. And as a Black artist, I use it as a tool as representation. Growing up, I didn't always fit in. I was shy and a little nervous. I know you can't believe it. I'm talking right now. I didn't have many friends. I won't say any. I was too good for the bad kids and too bad for the good kids. So art is how I became a new person. I remade myself. I changed some things about me and became more authentic to who I am. Why this matters. The connection between my family and art is clear to me. Both are about legacy. Just like my family's history influenced who I am, my art allows me to leave something behind that can inspire others, whether it's a place of digital art, a short film, or a new creative project. I want my work to spark ideas, emotions, and to really make people to be proud to be Black in any space they may be in. To me, Black History Month is a remembrance of all the creative minds who came before me, who used their voices, their talents, and their determination to pave the way. It's about honoring that legacy while creating something new, something future generations can look to aspire. So when I think about what's important to me, it always comes back to family and art. They shape my identity, fuel my creativity, and push me to strive for something greater. Thank you for listening, guys.
Thank you. So now we will
You,
go back.
Quentin, for those powerful words. I'm sure glad you made it here. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Now we'll go back to public comment, and I just wanted to point out to the public commenters who might be wondering, every meeting we pick one student who's not subject to a 2-minute limit. So thank you. Okay, so take it away, Chief of Staff Harrison.
Thank you, President Watson. We have 8 speakers tonight. They've all checked in. I would ask each speaker, as you see the clock winding down for the speaker ahead of you, please start getting ready to make your way to the podium. And the first thing we want you to do when you're at the podium, I shouldn't say the podium, at the table, please introduce yourself for the record. Thank you.
Thanks. Hi, my name is Dawn Abbott, and I teach 3rd and 4th grade in a split class this year at Woodridge Elementary. I've spent the last 19 of my 21 years as a classroom teacher in this amazing district at this amazing school, teaching either 3rd or 4th grade. I'm also a proud National Board Certified Teacher who achieves initial certification and renewal with the support of the program in BSD. I'm also a parent in this community with children receiving general education, special education, and advanced learning services at the elementary and middle school levels. I care deeply about my students and this beloved community, and I'm proud of the excellent ways we are able to support our students, both social, emotionally, and academically in our school district. I'm deeply saddened, worried about impending financial cuts in our district. I was asked recently at a listening session and through a survey what we should cut. Knowing the ins and outs of our district expenditures isn't part of my area of expertise, but knowing what cuts directly impact kids is. I'm standing here before you today to advocate for one important guiding principle. Any cuts made need to be as far away from students as possible. People and services closest to kids need to be maintained. So who is closest to kids? As an elementary school teacher, I am. My class size, my composition matters. I've had a variety of class sizes at Woodridge from 20 to 32 8 to 10-year-olds in a time. No matter how much experience, my degrees, my specialized reading certification, my national board certification, my professional development, I am simply not as effective with a class size of 28 as I am with 21. My best is not good enough because my capacity is limited. I'm only one person, and this year when I have to do double the planning, collaboration, and orchestration load to manage a split level class and use resources that are not officially allocated to support my students, that's especially true. Splits are not a sustainable option to adequately support the student needs we have with the current resources we have. Our special education teachers, our lab support teachers are not able to do their jobs as effectively because of increased class sizes, caseloads. Is that my time?
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. Thank you so much.
So thank you.
Dr. Imaki, President Watson, and members of the school board. My name is Nate Block, and I am a non-binary student at International. I'm here today because I and other gender diverse students across Bellevue are scared. We're scared because across the country, our rights are under attack. Now, with the president issuing orders entitled things such as defending women from gender ideology, extremism, and restoring biological truth to the federal government, protecting children from chemical and surgical mutilation, and keeping men out of women's sports, that fear is growing. Students are worried that these orders will affect them here in Washington, in Bellevue schools. They need to hear from you, Dr. Aramaki. They need you to affirm that you will uphold your duty to them and continue to maintain and defend their rights. I'm not asking you to change any policy or do anything differently, but only to communicate that you stand by and will continue following the law with RTW 28A.642.080 and WAX 162-32 and 392-180-025 and BSD policy 3211 and procedure 3211P, which both follow the WASDA models almost exactly. You've seen the news. You've had time to send an email. You've been asked to send an email. Now I'm begging you to send an email to BSD students and the BSD community, like you did regarding immigration policy, reaffirming the district's commitment to students' rights. Gender diverse students need a recommitment of support, similarly to our immigrant students in Bellevue. They need to hear from you that you stand by them. So please, it's not hard. It costs nothing, but we need you to do it. Send an email. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you, Dr. Amaki, and the members of the school board at International School's production of Les Miserables on March 14th. I sincerely hope that the gender diverse students in that program will not still be waiting to hear from you then. Thank you.
My name is Abigail Horsfall. I'm a parent of BSD students, a district educator, and a member of the Bellevue community. I'm here tonight to ask you, Dr. Aramaki, along with our board and members of the executive director team, to publicly reaffirm support for and commitment to protect our LGBTQIA+ community. This is a scary time right now for our queer, especially transgender students, their families, and our staff. They are threatened with multiple losses: identity, healthcare, athletic eligibility, bathroom access. Over the past few weeks, I've had multiple students and colleagues from across the district ask me for help understanding the current situation. I am confident there are more students and colleagues living in fear each day who don't know who to ask or where to turn. I tried looking for policy 3211 to share with them, but despite using multiple search phrases, I was only able to find references on our website to past Pride celebrations and information about anxiety, depression, and suicide prevention. We have a great page on our website sharing that our district is gender inclusive, but it's hard to find unless you know the right search terms. We need to fight for our most marginalized and at-risk students instead of caving to authoritarianism. As Chris Reichdahl said regarding the recent executive order about transgender athletes, Washington State will do everything in our power to protect the beautiful diversity of our 1.1 million students and educators. We believe in inclusion over discrimination and love over hate. I'm asking BSD to publicly reaffirm this message through multiple channels, specifically to promote gender inclusive messaging and communicate the details of policy and procedure 3211. I'm also asking for a wide communication that the district will not comply in advance or at all with harmful illegal executive orders. Our state government and other local districts have issued statements supporting our queer community, and it is time for Bellevue to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Reagan Lorden, the BEA Vice President, and I want to express my gratitude for your willingness to listen to the challenges educators face. As we navigate the current budget crisis, it's crucial to remember that educators' working conditions are directly impact our students' learning conditions. The Bellevue Education Association is dedicated to cultivating a culture of unity, prioritizing equity, and fostering an inclusive community that reflects our diverse population. When considering the proposed cuts, please think about the expectations already placed upon educators. Each year, we are asked to do more and more with less. And the prospect of reduced staff raises concerns about our ability to serve our students effectively. Often people rely on teacher guilt to achieve what needs to be done in public schools because we care so deeply for our students. That guilt will be replaced with the feeling of failure when we aren't able to give our students everything that they need. This is leading to teacher burnout at an unprecedented rate and creates an unsustainable system. Educators find themselves in a state of worry and anticipation about the potential impacts on our students. With these sentiments in mind, we implore you to make decisions that prioritize minimizing harm to staff and students, ensuring that quality education remains at the forefront despite these challenges. These decisions often seem to be made in a vacuum without meaningful input from those doing the day-to-day work. Your choices will not only shape the district's future, but also the well-being and success of the students we are dedicated to supporting. Thank you.
My name is Jill Brock, and I'm the BEA president. As the leader of this union, my foremost responsibility is to advocate for and support our educators, ensuring that their working conditions allow them to provide the highest level of service to their students. A key aspect in this work is ensuring that educator voices are heard during major decision-making processes. Right now, our educators and students are facing unprecedented challenges. Budget cuts, staffing shortages, and growing demands make it harder than ever to provide the education that our students deserve. Retaining quality educators and attracting new talent requires a commitment to fair working conditions, competitive compensation, and adequate resources. The state doesn't fund a bigger plate, yet we add more district initiatives each year and never take anything off the plate. This is felt by students and staff, and our entire community feels this impact. When class sizes grow too large, students receive less individual attention. When counselors, therapists, and support staff are stretched too thin, students in need don't get the help they deserve. And when educators leave the profession because the workload is unbearable, our students lose experienced, dedicated mentors. This is not just an education crisis, it's a community crisis. Our students deserve fully staffed schools, manageable classes, and the resources necessary to thrive. As you face these difficult budget decisions, we urge you to consider the people who make this district strong, the educators and staff who are dedicated to supporting our students' well-being and success. We stand in solidarity with our educators who have grave concern that the budget cuts will impact their class size, their position, or their employment in this district. Thank you.
The next three speakers are online, and first up is Hannah. Jess, can you check to see if Hannah is ready to present?
Hello, I'm ready.
Thank you. We're ready for you.
Good evening. My name is Hannah Yale. I've worked in the Bellevue School District since 2012, and I've been teaching art and art history at Bellevue High School since 2015. I'm here to ask about the broader threats to school funding from the federal government. Last week, an executive order was released titled Ending Radical Indoctrination in K-12 Schools. The executive order threatens to cut federal funding for any district that teaches the truth about racism, sexism, and so-called gender ideology. Federal funding makes up about 10 to 15% of our budget. With the Department of Government Efficiency taking control of the Treasury databases, this executive order may be enacted swiftly and effectively. My questions for the board and for Dr. Aramaki are, will the school board continue to support our right to teach these very real issues in our classrooms? Will the district maintain its vocal commitment to equity and inclusion? And if this order is enacted, what is our plan if our federal funding is cut as a result? Thank you.
Hello. My name is Tessa.
And my name is Sabella.
And we are members of First Robotics Team 2412, the Robotuts, based out of Sammamish High School. Today, we're here to speak on the possibility of implementing a policy to receive school credit for robotics extracurriculars. This is something we've been researching and advocating for a long time, and we have had some past conversations with the school board about this.
Recently, we have met with OSPI CTE Director Krista Fox, who introduced us to some Washington administrative codes outlining ways to get credit for robotics and other extracurriculars. Much of this is implemented on a district by district basis. The Washington administrative codes that we were introduced to is 392, 410, 300. And basically this goes over ways high school graduation credit can be given for experiences in non-traditional learning settings or conducted by external instructors. The other one that we went over was WAC 392, 410, 340. And this goes over school districts and how they can adopt written policies to grant high school graduation credit for alternative learning experiences, college courses, work experience, and online courses.
We wanted to bring these Washington administrative codes to your attention and ask that you look into the process of adopting or creating a policy for robotics extracurriculars to receive school credit within the Bellevue School District.
This is important not only to us, but over 400 students in the Bellevue School District who participate in FIRST Robotics. That only counts students in FRC, not FTC, so there's many more. Students can spend as much as 15 hours or more in a week on robotics, and this educational experience provides technical and soft skills that are crucial for many careers.
This wouldn't take financial resources, only time and commitment. Thank you for listening to us, and we hope to continue communicating and collaborating with you on this in the future.
Thank you.
And for our public commenters online, I don't know if you can hear the applause, but there was applause for both sets of speakers. So that concludes our public commenters for the evening. President Watson.
Okay, so it's time to move on to, point number 5, reports. We're not doing that tonight, so we're going on to board business. And the first thing is 6.1, approval of the resolution 2025-02, apportionment advance. So can we have a explanation of that for everyone?
Yes, good evening, board. I'm here tonight to seek approval on resolution 2025-02, which is the apportionment advancement. This authorization will authorize the district to petition OSPI for an advancement. This request is for 10% of our basic education apportionment allocation, which is equal to about $21 million. This request is being made to help bridge a gap of deficit gap that we'll see in June, where we're projecting a cash flow shortage of about 15 to 17 million, which this will be the amount we actually request from OSPI. We have to have documentation that shows where our highest cash flow shortage is, and that will be about 17. So we won't actually be getting the 21 million, but similar to how we do our levy request, we'll request the max amount. And this basically is going to be a reduction to our July and August apportionment amounts, and then that'll be spread out over the months before those two.
Okay. Would any board members like to? Oh, I guess what we should do is have a motion to approve this resolution, and then we'll have the discussion.
I move to approve the resolution 2025-02 apportionment advance.
Second.
Okay. Now, time for discussion. Would anybody like to address this? Director Block?
Yeah, I just wanted to reaffirm one of the things you mentioned there, Jason, that the amount that we'll actually get in an advance is the lesser of either the 10% of our, or is it 5%?
10%.
10% of the budget, or the maximum sort of the minimum, the maximum we need to make sure we get to a zero balance. Thanks.
Anybody else? Okay. I'll just say that, My understanding is this is a cash flow thing, and correct me if I'm wrong. Go ahead and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's got to do with not having the reserve that we always used to have. And we don't want to be in a position where we have like no money to make payroll. And then there is this ability to get approval to get an advance on the monies that would be coming, because they come in from the state in very uneven allotments month to month. And so this will just smooth out the cash flow. It won't really drive us into any undeal-withable debt or anything. It'll just smooth out our cash flow.
That is correct.
Can I make one more comment?
Okay.
Can I make one more comment?
Okay, Director Block.
Yeah, so along those lines, my understanding is that part of the state apportionment comes in July and August when we actually don't have school, and that is actually larger than our other monthly apportionments. And that essentially we're asking for some of that funds that we would normally get in July and August to come when we actually have teachers and school buildings that are operating, to make sure that we can support the expenses we can pay for the expenses in the time for when they're actually incurred.
That is correct, sir. In May and June, we get 5% and 6%. July and August are 10% and 12%. So you can see where the gap is.
Yeah. I think the state does this because it's better for them. Yeah. Okay. With that said, I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor of this resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nobody is opposed, so the motion carries.
President Watson, if I just may, I just want to make sure we capture the gentleman speaking was Jason Golick, the Executive Director for Business Services. So I want to make sure that we have your name both in the audio and the transcript record. Thank you,
Okay.
Jason.
Great, thanks. Okay, and so now we are on to the spending reduction proposal.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I guess that's probably the best way we could start this conversation. I appreciated the vote for that apportion advance. It was very non-emotional, but what I will say is what the board just approved is a devastating thing for our district, because it basically means that we do not have the reserve cash to pay our bills. And so when we talk about the fact that the board has a 5 to 6% expectation of fund balance, cash reserves, so that we can pay our bills, this is what they're talking about. And because our fund reserve is so low, we have to borrow from our future apportionment in order to pay our bills. And so I'm thankful for the approval, but this basically is a depiction of the challenges that we're facing right now fiscally in the Bellevue School District. So tonight, I'm going to share, I think the community, people who've been following along know that I'm going to share tonight a spending reduction plan proposal for the 25-26 school year. And so I'm going to go through some slides that just kind of paint the picture of why we're at where we're at, kind of what the situation is, what the drivers are in general, how grave of a situation we're in. And then after that, I'm going to talk about the way that we're going to reach $20 million in reduction of spending for the next school year. One thing I will also say is at the same time, I think within the next half an hour, I have a letter that's going to go out to the whole community, plus a report that says all of this. So I'm going to share the presentation today, but we actually have a written report with the details spelled out that's going to go out at the same time. So anybody who's listening, there will be an email in your inbox, whether you're a parent or family or staff, and you'll be able to read it, and we'll have it posted on the website as well. Okay, so let me see here. We always have clicker issues, but hold on just a second. It's good. There we go. Okay, so there we go. So just a reminder, here's the timeline. So we spent the month of January going out and getting community input. We did some listening sessions with the community. We went to every single school and met with staff during their lunchtime. We did focus groups with some families. We did focus groups with some students. We also put out a survey. And so we gathered as much input as we could just to hear from the community what people's values were. So even hearing from some of the teachers tonight, like Dawn and others, we went out to just hear what people felt was a value in the Bellevue School District. That then drove the designing of this reduction plan that I'm going to present tonight. And the thing that I'll just mention tonight is you're going to see an acknowledgement of the things that people said, but I'm also going to share that when you have to cut $20 million from a budget, everything is going to be impacted. So even things that people said were of value are going to be things that you're going to see to some extent on this reduction plan. After tonight, we're going to have about a month of comment phase. And so people can share their input, their feedback on the proposal. There's going to be multiple ways. There's going to be another survey that asks for people's kind of reactions to the proposal. And then we are going to have then on March 6th, we are adding a third board meeting to the month of March, where we're going to have a school board meeting just like this, but totally designated to open public comments. People could come and share their perspectives about the proposal. I'm going to then take all of the information from the survey that we put out, from open public comment. I'm going to make any revisions that I possibly can. I'm going to present kind of an updated proposal to the board by the 10th, which is like a Monday, I think. And then on the 13th, the board will have an opportunity to vote on the reduction plan. So I've used this slide before. This just captures in words kind of our financial reality, but it says here, like many districts across the state, we're grappling with a substantial budget deficit caused by rising costs, increased student needs, and inadequate state funding. Since COVID, we have been spending more than we receive in revenue, leading to the depletion of our reserves below the 5% required by board policy, which is why we did the apportionment advance just a moment ago. To put us on a path to restoring our financial stability, we need to reduce spending. So this part, I'm just going to say, the plan was to reduce $16 million in expenditures next year because we're cutting $10 million of spending this year. But it's hard to cut spending in the middle of the year. And so it looks like we're going to be able to reach about $6 million of expenditure cuts this year, which means we are shooting for $20 million of spending cuts next year. This is a picture of a chart that I got from OSPI a couple of weeks ago, but it's basically the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction has let Bellevue know that we are on their financial warning list this year. The financial warning list is made up of a bunch of different factors, but the driving factor is whether you have enough cash reserves on hand to pay your bills every month. And so, as you can see, we do not. By the time June comes, we will not have enough money in our account to be able to pay our salaries, our fees, and the operating costs, fuel, and things like that. I covered all of the names of the other school districts. There's like 20 school districts on this list. These are the 20 most, the 20 school districts that are having the greatest challenges with their finances right now. And it ranges big and small school districts, rural and urban. We're all on this list. I think the thing that is scary for me and what I want the community to know loud and clear is the list goes from worst to best. And that's worst to best of the worst. And we are number 3. The only school districts that are in worse financial shape than us right now are 2 districts that are in binding conditions. So that's my way of not trying to scare people, but I want everybody to know that the situation that we're in financially is dire. It's a cash flow issue, and the cash flow issue will drive kind of the health of our district, whether we can provide what teachers need, provide what students need. We have to get off of this list, and the proposal that I'm going to share tonight is going to get us off the list. This is a picture of our fund balance over time. So the different lines represent the different years. The lines that are closer to the top are 4 or 5 years ago. We had a much healthier fund balance, and it shows from September all the way through August. So you can see our fund balance or our savings goes up and down. And that basically happens because the state gives us money in unequal allocations every month. So it goes up and down because of the state apportionment. But then you see spikes every once in a while because twice a year we get funding from our local levy. So when the local levy money comes in twice a year, it spikes our cash reserves. But what you can see is over the past 5 years, every year our fund balance has dropped. And so that last line, the dotted line, is our projection for the rest of this year. The green line is the actuals. And so you can see that this past December, we dipped below zero in our ending fund balance. And we are projected to be below zero for the next few months. We will come up when the additional revenue comes from our local levy, but then we get to that point in June where with the lower allocation from the state, we will not have enough money to pay for our bills. And so this is an issue and something that we must address through these spending cuts. So I'll just say that. This slide, I've shown this to PTA and some others, but it just kind of captures how we got here. There are some statewide issues that I would say are the main drivers of this. And then there are local issues that I want to acknowledge. So this just kind of captures statewide. I talk about this all the time. I will keep saying it, but the main issue with the state is that there is a decline in the percent of funding to education in the state budget. If you look at state funding over time, 2018 was the high. We were over 50% of the state budget went to public education. We have steadily dropped and now are somewhere around 42% of the state budget. We are in a very well-resourced state, and yet the funding for public education has gone down, even though this was during COVID and after COVID when the needs of students have been going up. That is the main driver for some of the financial troubles that we're having in Bellevue. In addition to that, operating costs and inflation. Everyone's been talking about the cost of eggs and things like that, but I will say that it is true that operating costs and inflation have skyrocketed since COVID. And so everything is more expensive. Our salaries are more expensive, our food is more expensive, our fuel is more expensive, insurance is more expensive. Everything that we pay to operate the school district is more expensive. And yet the percent of funding for education has gone down. In addition to that, from the McCleary decision, which brought a lot more state funding to the school districts, they capped local levy dollars that you can raise. So Bellevue had been used to raising a lot of money locally to be able to provide for this amazing education that we have in this city. But with McCleary, the state provided a lot more funding to schools, but they capped at a very low rate what cities can raise for their school districts. And so that really impacted us as well. And then the last one just talks about unfunded mandates. There's a lot of things that the state asks us to do that they don't then pay for, including like benefits for our staff. They don't provide full benefits, but we're expected to pay full benefits for all of our staff. On the local side, I've talked about these things before, but we have declining enrollment. We've lost 2,000 kids during COVID. We've seen a stabilization of that, which we're really proud of, but that really impacted our budget. We've talked about this here in the board room, but we've had some inaccurate or flat out incorrect budget assumptions that were made, which resulted in us not budgeting for all of the expenses that we had, whether that was for operating costs or the cost of our collective bargaining agreements. We had the end of ESSER funds. ESSER funds are the federal funds that came during COVID to help us with things like mental health and with lowering class size and with repairing HVAC systems. That funding ended a few years ago. And then we've had challenges in Bellevue just with budget and spending management and oversight. So I just want to call that out, and we are taking steps to fix that. And then the last one is about budget reporting. We are responsible as a district to report our budget and expenditures and our fund balance to the school board, and that has not been done to the level that they need in order to provide fiscal oversight. And so we are working on that. The last thing I'll just mention on this slide is I think when we first started talking about our financial issues, maybe in the late fall, winter, we had a number of slides that talked about our collective bargaining agreement with BEA in particular. And I think for folks who were listening to that meeting, there was a sense from many that by showing those slides that we were saying that the budget crisis was caused by a collective bargaining agreement that was by the BEA collective bargaining agreement. So I just want to take this moment. It's not really the purpose of this slide, but I want to take the moment to just say that was not my intention. And I want the community to know that I do not blame whether it's the BEA or any of our associations for the budget crisis. That wasn't the purpose. It was really, the intention was to say, we aren't budgeting things correctly. We need to fix that. But I think the impact on many of our staff by seeing that was that it was blame. And so I want to apologize if people, if that was how it landed on people. That was not my intent. And in fact, I would say that we have the most incredible educators here in Bellevue, whether it's our CERT staff, our classified staff, or the leadership that we have. And I feel like we need to compensate them very, very well. That is my stance. And so I will not apologize for compensating our staff well. And so I apologize again, if people interpret it that way. That was not my intent. And so I hope that we can move forward from there. With that, I'll move on. So I've shown this slide before, but this slide captures the kind of the gravity of state funding. These are the big three that we talk about across the state: special education, MSOCs, and transportation. But in special education, we were underfunded by $133 million over the past 3 to 5 years. In materials and supplies, we were underfunded by $30 million. In transportation, we were underfunded by $4.27 million. So you can just see that if any one of those things were fixed, we would not be in the budget crisis that we're in. This slide shows you over time, the orange bars are the amount of money that we're spending on students. The line is our enrollment. And so you can see that there were 4 years prior to COVID where we were spending less than the money that we're bringing in. And so we were in good times. And when you look at our fund balance, it was up over $30 million. It was, those were our good times. But what you can see is our spending increased and increased and increased and increased over time, and our student enrollment dropped. And so our spending started exceeding the enrollment, the money that we get for our student enrollment. And you can see how that would contribute to the financial crisis that we're in. The apportionment advance, we talked a lot about that, but this is the result of the situation that we're in. We have to borrow from the money we're going to get in the future so that we can pay our bills in June. And we have to get out of that situation. It is an untenable place to be. I've talked about this before, so I don't want to belabor the point, but I will say that even though there's things that we could have done better for sure over the past 3 or 4 years, there is a lot that we have done. We are one of the only districts, maybe the only district, that due to declining enrollment, we consolidated schools. Almost every other school district needed to have consolidated schools because of the drop in enrollment. Bellevue is one of the only schools to have gotten that done. And so I just want to acknowledge in our community that there has been a lot of pain in cutting over the past 3 or 4 years. We have in some ways done a lot and more than other districts have, and yet there's so much more that we have to do. So hopefully that gives you the context. The main point of that is that we are not in a good place right now. We have to cut our spending by $20 million. This is not an optional thing. And so I want people to see this. There might be, as you're hearing me talk about what we're going to cut, there's feeling of maybe we could save this, maybe we can save that, maybe we can not cut that, maybe we cannot cut that. I feel that every time I look at this, and I will say, if we don't get to $20 million, we are going to have problems next year. And I cannot allow that to happen. So I don't want to belabor the part about community engagement, but we had an input phase in January before I developed this plan. Now that I've developed the plan and I'm putting it out publicly, we have a feedback phase. And so I just want to encourage our community to give feedback on this plan sometime over the next month. This just shows all the different ways that we've reached out to students, families, community administrators. We heard a lot of things, a lot of great ideas. We heard a lot of conflicting ideas. Some people said close more schools. Other people said whatever you do, don't close more schools. Some people said please keep the 7-period day. Other people were like get rid of the 7-period day. There was a lot of like that. So some canceling out, I would say, of feedback. But in general, there were about 5 themes that we heard across the board from people, whether they were students, families, or staff. And these are the 5 things that kind of resonated. The first one is, and this is something that I love about the Bellevue School District, but there was this desire to buffer those with the greatest needs to the extent possible. Don't just make blanket cuts that are made regardless of whether the school is Title I school or not. People said, try to buffer as much as possible to protect those with greatest needs. You could hear from the public commenters today. People in Bellevue care about those who are most marginalized. And that is an unbelievable value. And that came out loud and clear. You're going to see that trend, that theme through the budget cuts. The second one is preserve student engagement and learning. That's kind of a, I don't know, educationese way of saying people want to protect the 7-period day. People want to protect student activities and athletics and sports and music. I mean, just listening to Quentin, I mean, he ran here from Sammamish in Crocs to tell us how much family and art matter to him. That's how much things like art matter to kids. He would run here in Crocs. I mean, I can hardly walk in Crocs, I will just say. But the fact that he did that, and I mean, if I was sitting there talking to him out there, I mean, he's covered in sweat. I mean, that guy, it was unbelievable. But art matters to kids. I mean, things like that matter. And so kids, adults, parents, they said, please protect those types of things, because in some ways for student mental health and wellness, those things matter. For community and friendship building, swim team matters to them. Theater class matters to them. So that was a theme across the board. 3, prioritize student-facing supports. We heard this from Dawn when she said this, but if you have to make cuts, try to protect the people that support kids directly. And we heard that all across the board. I'll just pause there by saying, I'm saying all of these things, but you're going to see a lot of cuts that have to do with these things, only because we have to cut $20 million. So these things they impacted how I created the proposal, but I just want to make sure that once I read these, you're going to be like, what happened to those priorities? The fourth one is people said, like, you got to get more efficient, you got to get more lean, and start with the central office. So that's always what people say, like cut from the central office. And I heard it loud and clear. And we've done that over the past couple of years, and you're going to see it in this plan. And then the fifth one is improved transparency and communication. Everybody wants more communication, more transparency. We are working on that, starting with the board, but we're going to continue to try to improve that with our community as well. I know people are probably like, get to the point. So my key considerations in putting this together, one, as the superintendent of the school district, I must prevent us from going into binding conditions, and I have to rebuild the fund balance. If I don't do that, you might as well find somebody else. So that is instability in our fund balance will create chaos for the entire system as it is right now, but it could totally get worse. So that's my first consideration. $20 million, I'm going to protect rebuild the fund balance, and I'm going to keep us from going into binding conditions. 2, I took the themes from what I heard from the community, considered the tensions that I heard from different groups, and tried to put that together to create this proposal. 3, we have budget parameters that the school board put together. And so I am here to follow the lead of the school board. They told us to consider each and every student, to prioritize equity, to make sure that we attend to the strategic plan, to rebuild the fund balance. So there's parameters that the school board has put forward for me to follow. 4th, our strategic plan, we had an incredible process with all these community members, staff, kids, family, to put together what we want the future of the Bellevue School District to be. So the strategic plan guides where we want to invest in the future. We have an equity-driven decision-making model that is codified in policy and procedure that we follow. It guides how we engage with the community. It guides how we look at how we invest our funds. And then lastly, the last consideration that I took into account was, as I'm thinking about making all of these cuts, I tried to hold in my mind, how can I take this opportunity to not just cut, but to reorganize the way we support students and staff? I want to share, before I share what's in the plan, it's like, this is my last slide, I'm pretty sure, before I talk about what we're actually going to, planning to cut. I want to show people what we're not planning to cut. One, we're not planning to, there's no cutting of the 7-period day at high school or middle school. We just felt like across the board, people were like, please do not touch the 7-period day. Kids want their electives. They want to be able to take art and music and foreign language and all of those things. So we didn't touch that. And we think we can fix things without having to touch that. Two, we did not touch athletics, activities, extracurriculars, and clubs. We left our investment in that. I know that sometimes those are the first and easiest place to go, but we felt like for our own kids, mental health and wellness, that we needed to protect that. Elementary specialists, we did not cut for the same reason. Library, art, music, PE, and we've been investing in computer science specialists at our Title I funded schools, and we did not touch that. So we wanted that so that kids have access to those things, but we also, that is a lever for giving teachers release time to be able to collaborate and do their planning and things like that. We didn't cut full-time counselors at elementary. We also did not cut the additional counseling support that we provide at our Title I schools. So we add counseling time to all of our Title I schools, and we did not touch that. We didn't touch our graduation success coaches. Our students talked about how important some of these people are in their buildings. They provide, in some cases, more than support for graduating from high school. They provide them with a lot of social emotional support and guidance. And so we left the graduation success coaches, and we did not consider school closures or consolidations. So for folks who are like, consider school closures and consolidations, what I'll say is our enrollment is rebounding. Kids are coming back. In some cases, we're getting kids from out of the district, but it's stabilizing our buildings. And so we don't have to look at consolidation because it wouldn't necessarily save us money. Okay. So with that, I'll just let you look at this. This is the overview slide of how we're going to get to $20 million. There's 3 buckets that I'm going to talk about. The first one is central office. We're planning to cut 40 to 49 positions, which comes out to about $5 to $6 million. The investments that we have funded out of ESSER, which is no longer available to us, we are going to have to cut because the things that we paid for out of ESSER, we do not have funding for. I will talk about that in a minute. We will save $3.5 to $4 million or so. And then finally, even though we tried our hardest to protect the schools from cuts, you can't get to $20 million without the schools because most of our money that we spend are in our schools. And so we're planning to cut about 70 to almost 100 positions from our school buildings. So we have about 30 schools. That's about 2 to 3 people per building. So if you just, when you look at that, it's about 2 to 3 people per building, which is a lot, but it's something that I think that we are going to have to live with because we don't really have a choice. So in total, this plan reduces our FTE, our staff, about 135 to 180 staff members. And I'll just say, this is a lot, and it should be shocking, but they did this last year in Vancouver. They've done this in Yakima. People are cutting hundreds and hundreds of people every single year. Some people have done it before us, and some people are going to do it after us. This is just the year for us to do that. Okay, so I'm going to start with central office because that's where I started in developing this plan. Central office. So central office is, I think, less than 10% of the actual total budget for the school district. It's somewhere around 8% of our budget. So you can't pull tons and tons of things, But what I want people to see is I heard the feedback about slimming down central office, and that's what we did. We're going to cut 5 to 8 leadership positions. So cabinet level and executive director, director level positions. 5 to 8 positions will save us somewhere around $1 million to $2 million. That includes things like not replacing my deputy superintendents. And so I just want you to know that I'm committed to leading the way in absorbing some of these cuts and taking on more responsibility. Until our fund balance is stable, we're going to continue with central office furloughs and contract holdbacks, which is central office did furloughs, central office gave up their vacation buyback and a number of contract provisions. And so we're going to continue to do that until we can stabilize our fund balance. And then central office staff. So these are all of our certificated teachers, certificated staff, and classified staff. We're going to cut about 25 to 30 of them from the central office, which will save us about $2 million. I'm going to show you a slide later that kind of gives you an analysis, but that cuts our teaching and learning department down by about half. And then operationally, this is maintenance, facilities, the guys who are, who are helping us kind of clear out our parking lots and things. We are going to trim down operations staff by about 10 to 11 people, which will save us about $1 million. A total of 40 to 50 staff from central office, including our operations, which will save us somewhere between $5 and $7 million. Okay, so the next one I'm going to show is ESSER, and I'm just going to say before I show the ESSER slide, ESSER is all about providing the most support to the kids in need. It was funding from the federal government to support kids during COVID. So I just want to prepare people because even though our value is equity, these are things that are not funded anywhere. And even though I would wish this next slide would never have to be up there, until we get more funding from the state, it's not something that we can afford. So we pay for a number of things out of ESSER money. We started co-teachers at Title I schools. We provide extra teachers to our elementary title schools to provide more interventions, more support, lower the class size, and just be kind of to make teams to support our kids with the greatest needs. We pay for our mental health assistance team. These are our mental health counselors who work with our kids to provide them with clinical mental health care. We have almost 20 MHAT counselors right now supporting our schools, 2 in every high school, 1 in all the middle schools and choice schools, and then we have a number of them supporting elementary. We hired a family engagement specialists. We have 10 of them that we hired. We started the Summit program. Not a lot of people will know about that, but it's kind of an extension of RISE. And Summit is where, for our kids who have significant anxiety, it's a teacher that's assigned there who can be a space for the kids to go to if they cannot go to class. Because once a student leaves the school building, it's very hard to bring them back into the building. So Summit allows them to stay without having to have the anxiety of going to class. And I know personally kids that have benefited from the Summit program. And then tutoring. I mean, there's all these news stories about kids and how they're falling farther and farther and farther behind. Tutoring is one of those ways that a lot of our families take advantage of to bring their kids' academics up. And we are going to cut our tutoring in half by $250,000. So the proposal here is the only way that I can stomach it is that we're not cutting all of this. We have about 6 co-teachers at title schools. I'm proposing to cut 1 to 3 of them that are funded by general funds, keeping the ones that are funded by title. We have about 20 MHAT counselors. The proposal is to cut 15 or 16 of them, try to keep 3 or 4 of them. And I'll just stop by saying this about mental health assistance team. It's one of the most innovative things we have ever done in this school district. It's one of the most powerful things that we do for kids. Coming out of COVID, the mental health needs of our students skyrocketed. If any of you have kids or teenagers, you don't even have to think twice about how important our MHAT counselors have been. To be able to have in-school mental health clinical support without having to go and look for somebody outside is the right thing to do. I will not apologize to anybody for continuing to fund MHAT after the ESSER funds ran out. What we're going to do to mitigate this is we're going to try to keep 3 or 4. The Bellevue Schools Foundation pays for 1. We're going to, instead of having them do direct services to the kids, we're going to have them be mental health kind of coordinators to help the kids coordinate. Instead of screening kids 5 years in a row, we're going to screen once in middle school, once in high school, and then we're going to elevate our partnerships with community-based mental health providers like Asian Counseling Referral Services, CMAR. We have a number of organizations that get grant funding and other government funding, and we're going to leverage our partners to be able to provide mental health supports for kids. So this is not an end to mental health support for kids. It is going to be a significant departure from how we've been doing it. It simply is not something that we can afford. No other district has this model because they can't afford it, and we're just bringing it back down to where everybody else is. And as soon as we have the resources to do it, this is going to be one of the top priorities for me to restore in some way. The family engagement specialists will reduce by 3 to 5, maintaining family engagement specialists in our Title I schools, and then eliminating the summit program and cutting our tutoring in half. That cuts about 23 to 31 FTE, saving us between $3 and $4 million. So that then brings us to our schools. And what I'll say is, this is the slide where you'll look and be like, there's no way that you got this from listening to the community. But what I'll say is you just cannot reach $20 million without cutting from things that people want and need. And so my heart breaks on this slide as well. Before I talk about each of these individual items, I will say that there's a little asterisk that says minimize reductions at title schools. So when you look at these reductions, I'm going to try to buffer the title schools as much as possible. But we, starting with assistant principals, the state funds 1.2 administrators per elementary school. That's 400 students. And at the 1.2 FTE level, they give us a fraction of what our assistant principals cost. So in the FTE that they give us from the money they give us from the state for administrators for elementary schools, it covers about a principal. And so even though the assistant principals are essential in supporting students with behaviors, communicating with families, partnering with community partners, we do not have the money from the state to fund them. And so we are going to reduce 12 to 16, primarily elementary assistant principals. We're going to preserve elementary APs at elementary schools that are over 700 kids. And we are going to preserve elementary APs at some level, whether it's half-time or full-time at the Title I schools. But at all the other elementary schools, we have to cut the assistant principals. The districts right around us are doing the exact same thing because we just simply don't have the room to pay for it. Elementary and secondary certificated staff, this is about class size. So we have class size targets in our collective bargaining agreement with the Bellevue Education Association. I think that we can staff tighter to those targets. More teachers will be at the targets, less teachers will be below the targets. And by doing that, we can cut about 10 to 15 teachers from elementary. We can cut about 20 to 25 teachers from secondary. What this means is at elementary, we might see an average class size increase of about 1 student per class. We might see more split classes. This year, we added 9 teachers to elementary to undo splits. That was before I realized that we had a financial crisis kind of brewing. And so we're basically, those 9 that we released this fall are teachers that we would take back. And so people might experience that as more split classes. They might see it as classes that are more at the 25, 24 range. At the secondary level, what this means is we are going to see some bigger classes, maybe an average increase of 1 to 2 students per class. But what it also means is we cannot run classes that are small. Right now, we have some classes that are below 20 kids. We're trying to meet the needs of students and provide the classes that they want to take, but we simply cannot afford to run classes that are small. And so we might see some electives that we just don't have enough student interest to take. The non-classroom certificated staff are all of our staff that have like caseloads. So this one could be, this group is like special education teachers, PBIS specialists, facilitators, includes ITCLs, any certificated staff that's in the building that's not a classroom teacher. We are going to maximize the caseloads, and we are going to consolidate some positions so that we're going to have less people doing the job that is required at the schools. And so we think that we can pull about 10 to 20 people out by doing that. That will save us about $1.5 to $3 million. And then classified staff, this is like office staff at the secondaries. This is GSAs at the elementaries. We're planning to reduce about 1 classified staff position per school building. So we're going to look at it through an equity lens. So we're going to try to buffer some of the higher poverty schools and some of the mid-range poverty schools. But it comes out to about an average of 1 staff per. That is a total of 70 to about 100 staff members with a savings of $10 to $14 million. This is just a quick analysis by group. So it's just an interesting thing. I just want to show, mainly to show that we have done everything we can to protect our schools as much as possible in the past. If you look at this chart, the top 3 lines are school-based administrators, certificated teachers, and certificated staff, and then classified staff. The first column is the percent reduction from comparing this year to next year. So by removing those assistant principals from elementary schools, we're cutting 22% of the administrative core from schools. All of these, the teacher reductions that I talked about and the classified staff reductions that I talked about, comes out to about 4 to 5% reduction of the total school-based certificated and classified. So in the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge percentage of people. To the school building, it's going to feel like a lot. And to the people that are impacted with their jobs, it is going to be the world. But I have to look at it kind of from the systems level. And so I feel comfortable as I can be by minimizing the impact on our people that work closest with our kids. The second 3 group are central office. With the administrators, again, we're cutting 22% of our administrators next year compared to this year. The line next to it is how much we've cut over the past 3 years. And so I just highlighted the administrators because we've been cutting back on our executive directors and director level leaders every single year. So over the past 3 years, we've cut 34%. We will have cut 34% of about a third of our leadership at the central office. But for next year, it'll be a 22% cut compared to this year. The certificated teachers we're cutting half of our certificated staff from central office. And that is a huge number. And I'll just say that this is something that we heard a lot of input from. We have the most incredible teaching and learning department, special education teachers that are working at central office supporting schools. We have some of the most, robust curriculum resources. If you're a brand new teacher in Bellevue, you are in a good place because you have every support that you need. But people have asked us to move the resources to the schools as much as possible. And so we're taking 50% of our certificated staff at central office and then redistributing them to the school building. It's going to be a huge change in support. I think people will notice that there's just going to be less support from central office for some of the core functions of teaching and learning. But it's something that we're going to have to adjust to. And I have some ideas about elevating teacher leadership at the school level in lieu of having, people downtown doing that work. So for all of my central office teachers who are listening, I just want you to know how much I value you, and the work that you do is so incredible. And the kids that get you in the classrooms and in the schools are going to be so fortunate. And then classified, we're going to reduce central office classified by 7%. So that's kind of an analysis if you want to look at kind of how we're impacting our leaders, how we're impacting our certificated staff, how we're impacting our classified staff. The only hope that I can hold on to on the horizon is the fact that in the 2025 legislative session, all of the bills for the big three have basically been launched. And so there's 3 special education bills that we're keeping an eye on, 2 MSOC bills, 1 transportation bill, and there's a couple of levy bills that are out there that would bring a significant amount of resources to Bellevue. And so it's just important for people to follow along and to know that I'm not okay with just talking about cutting. I want you to know that I am equally as focused on bringing in more revenue so that we can bring back resources to our district. If we bring back funding from the state and they deliver on basic education for our school districts, not just Bellevue, but for all of Washington State, these are the restoration plan priorities. So this is the part that I'm also going to ask the board to vote on in March. But these are the things based on input that I feel like were the most important to the most number of people and that align to the values of our community. The first thing is we have to get a fund balance of about $20 million. 15 is the minimum, but we need $20 million. We have to borrow $20 million. That is kind of the magic number for us. It's about 5% of the $400 million budget that we have. Any money that comes in up until about 15 million, ideally 20 million, has to go to the fund balance. It cannot go to anything else. We could never provide raises or anything to anybody if we don't have money in our fund balance. So that's number 1. That's my first priority, and I'm going to stick to that. But beyond that, these next 4 are the things that we're going to try to work to bring back. 1 starts with the schools. We want to bring back any student-facing school-based staffing. That means class sizes, classroom teachers, special education teachers, things like that. School-based staffing that support kids. Second, student behavior and mental health supports, MPAT counselors, PBIS specialists, deans, our assistant principals, people who support the whole well-roundedness of our kids. Third, strategic plan investments. We have to continue to build a school district that people want to send their kids to and that our teachers want to work at. And then 4, operational excellence. I always think about what happens when you don't invest in operations. When we had that year, it might have been last year, where we didn't have enough bus drivers, that just shows you if you don't invest in operations, everything falls apart. And so I want to make sure that once we have some money, that we continue to kind of strengthen and stabilize our operations. And so they're taking a lot of cuts. They know that it's not permanent and that we will restore them when we can. So that's the restoration plan priorities. Those are the things that are going to guide what we do with extra funding if we have it. And I expect that we're going to get some from the legislature this year. Again, the timeline, just so people can remember, in blue is today. The proposal goes to the board. The community gets to see it. A letter is going out from me. It might even be in people's inboxes. There's a written report as well that goes with it that explains the things that I just talked about. February, this month until March is comment phase. March 6th, open public meeting just like this, and we'll take as many public commenters as are there. And so we have a link in my letter to sign up for public comment if you want to get on there first on the list. But then if people show up and want to sign up, we're going to allow them to show up and sign up as well. The focus of March 6th is to listen to the community. And then March 10th, I will provide any revisions or possible and the way that you'll see that is a lot of these are ranges. Could be one person, could be 3 people, could be 10 positions, could be 15. I'm going to try to tighten that based on the feedback that I get from the community. And then the board will vote on March 13th. Yeah, so we have to get this done. This is really hard. I just need everybody to kind of lean in with me. But I think the payoff will be huge over the next couple of years if we can just stabilize. Tonight in the study session, so it's going to get really cold. So study session tonight, we're going to, after the regular board meeting, we're going to stop. Some of the board members and others may want to go home so that they can listen and then not have to drive home in the cold and I'm not just in the ice. Yes, thank you. So we will take a maybe an extended break and then we'll come back for study session. Tonight is mainly about the December financials. And so Jason and his team, I've already sent them home so that they could present to us online. But they're going to present our December financials. They're going to show what our spending challenges are. They're going to talk about how hard it is for us to cut funding this year. They're going to talk about our December fund balance being below 0. They're going to talk about the risk of a negative fund balance at the end of the year. They're going to talk a little bit about furloughs, how they're helping, but not enough. They're going to talk about a little bit more about the apportionment advancement, the risk of binding conditions. And they may talk about the need to find additional 24-25 reductions. That last point, I'll just say, we cannot go, going negative at the end of the year is detrimental. That is the definition of binding conditions. And so anything that we can do this year to inject cash into our fund, we must do. So the cabinet, we're talking about additional hiring freezes, even of essential positions. There, we have to find a way to prevent ourselves from going negative because negative fund balance at the end of the year is the definition of binding conditions. And binding conditions is when the state comes in and basically limits your decision making. The decision making right now is in our hands, but when you go into binding conditions, that level of decision making gets transferred over to the state. And we do not want that to happen. So I'm going to do everything in my power to kind of keep us from going off the cliff. I need everybody's help to do that. I think that we can do it if we lean in together. So with that, I will turn it back over to you, President Watson.
Okay. I'm now going to ask for board members to comment on what they've heard. I'm not sure anybody wants to go first, but does anybody want to go first? Otherwise,
Or clarifying questions.
there are clarifying questions too. Otherwise, I guess I can go first. I don't have the words to say how I feel about this. It's terrible. It's just terrible. And it's not anything I ever wanted to be involved with. And I found that this tonight is just very, very sobering. But from what I understood from sessions at WASDA, that binding conditions, you just really don't want the state coming in and start, they'll make decisions and they'll slash in ways that are not the ways, I mean, this is bad, but it could get worse. And I think it also emphasizes the board in our budget parameters and priorities where we really did say, let's try to keep this away from the kids because the students are the ones we most need to serve. But I will also say in my core values, it comes also, staff runs a close second for me to the kids because I think those things work together. It's about the relationships that the kids have with the staff members. And so this is really, really going to hurt kids and it's going to hurt staff. And I don't ever want to be in this position to have to lay off staff, but I don't see how to prevent it without going into these binding conditions, which will just cause the state to come in and do it. So we are kind of stuck. And I will say, the board has been trying to provide fiscal oversight. I've been doing that for years. I've been using the state auditors that come in every year. And I can say, based on that none of this is due to any kind of like fraud or, those kinds of things that a state auditor would find. We always really did have a pretty clean, bill of health. And we also always had a very good bond rating. So when our superintendent tells us it's about, the costs going up and the funding being inadequate, I mean, that really is a big piece of it. I will also say that I felt that based on things I learned at the WASDA conference, where I did a deep dive, WASDA being the Washington State School Directors, on more and more financial things and talking to other people of what's going on in their districts, it does turn out that the monthly reports that were required by law were not frequent enough. They weren't exactly monthly all the time, and they weren't detailed enough for us to really catch this before it happened. And I think that the important thing is for the board to find ways to catch this before anything happens again, like before anything would get any worse than where we are right now. And so you may have noticed the big difference between the reports that we were getting to the board before and the reports that we're getting after, being led by Jason Golick. They're much more detailed. We are having these study sessions. We're trying to make all of these financial things more transparent to the community. I know I heard some feedback that these reports tend to lag, and unfortunately, in the past, they'd lagged by months and months. Right now, they're lagging about a month, which I think is reasonable because it takes that long to kind of like close the books on the month and pull together a report. So I think you'll see that those are much better than they were. And there's much more explanation of like what's happening in the different categories, more transparency to the community. And I know that our board members, all of us, have been committed to learning best practices from other districts, to talking to finance people in other districts. I talked to other board members that are going through the same things. And we've also learned a lot about metrics that we didn't necessarily know about before that we could look at to really try to catch anything like this from ever happening again. But unfortunately, we are where we are. And due to some things like, not getting the adequate funding from the state and cost overruns in some calculations that were done on the last budget and some things like that, we're just stuck. And I'm so sorry. I apologize to every teacher and staff member that's going to be affected by this. Okay, who's next?
Thank you, President Watson, and thank you, Dr. Aramaki, for the proposal, and to the team that conducted all of the listening sessions and focus groups, engaging with our staff and our families, and really grateful to our community and our staff and families for their feedback and for participating in those sessions. It sounds like they were pretty well attended, and I'm just really grateful that you all chose to share your voice with the district. I really just kind of want to center this conversation and acknowledge the emotional impact of our situation. This is very difficult news, and I want to acknowledge that any potential staff cuts impact the lives of the people who have contributed to the success of this school district. As you mentioned earlier, Dr. Aramaki, it also affects the very core of our organization and our entire community. Our educators and our staff are truly some of the most exceptional subject matter experts in the entire state of Washington. And I made the decision to specifically move here to Bellevue because of the excellent educational opportunities that it provides for my son. And I know that there are other families that have relocated and have done the same thing. To be faced with having these difficult conversations and making such impactful decisions that affect people's livelihoods and forcing us to reevaluate the services and offerings and opportunities available to our students because education is so significantly underfunded is nothing short of heart-wrenching. So I just want everyone to know that we are taking our time with this proposal and that the decisions that we're making are not going to be made lightly. That's it for now, please. Thank you.
So I appreciate all that. I worked for the state for about 10 years, and I went through 2 periods where they went through reductions in force, and there's nothing happy about that. It means that services plans stall. We all have goals for expansion and new goals that we're shooting for. Some of those slow down, being in the staff, I know that impacts morale. You see friends who you see supports that you're used to that are lost, and it's very painful to go through that. And I totally empathize, recognize that, and see that. I also believe that we're going to get to better days, and that we have path to get there. That this is a start. So I have a couple of questions. So I'll start kind of as one of the parents of current students. You know, trying to make sense of what's proposed for cutting and what's not. It helps me to understand what may change, what won't change. I think you did a good job of outlining some of the things that will change. So just for clarity for families and parents and students that might be out there, AP classes at all our high schools, we're still going to have those.
Yes, that's right.
So CTE classes, those are going to be preserved here. So our AL program in the elementary and middle schools, that's going to be preserved here, yeah?
Yes, that's right. No changes to advanced learning.
Our language programs like Jingmei and Puesta, those are going to be preserved.
That's right.
We're still going to have athletic coaches and athletic teams out there in the sports fields in the fall, winter, and spring.
Yeah, that's right. And I think our smallest school has at least 75 coaches that work with kids, so we will maintain that.
And we're still going to have college counselors in our high schools helping students navigate that process.
Yes, that's right.
So we're preserving a lot of the services in addition to that we're going to have. So as a parent with students, I know the value of class sizes. Families don't like split classes. They immediately see it and are like, why? Why was my kid picked for this? How did this happen? Why is my teacher being asked to do double the work? How are they able to manage that? And also, there may be, I think one of the things that's been hinted at is there may be some classes that we've been able to offer at 14 or 12 students that we may not be able to offer in the future. Some of the electives, some of the extremely advanced AP courses at some sites may be challenges to if we don't have the enrollment to support the teacher in that classroom, we may struggle to offer that. That kind of makes me, go back and say, well, what can we do now? You outlined the legislative advocacy. We as a community can support that legislative advocacy. Families, the PTSAs at your buildings, the Bellevue School Foundation supports the whole district. We're also a part of the community of Bellevue and working with the city of Bellevue to see if there are places where they can help restore or provide some of the supports. I know that the city of Seattle and Mercer Island provide support, direct support for mental health in their schools. I know that the city of Seattle also provides some support for preschool programs, early education programs. It can't be more transparent. The minimum requirement for this year is that the 2024-25 budget must end in the black. We must have at least a small surplus coming out of this year. We can't continue to have deficits in this year, and we need to make sure that next year doesn't have a deficit as well. One of the questions that I hear is, school closures. We had a school closure at the elementary school, and there was a review of the middle schools. Our current enrollment, so school closures were driven by both current enrollment and projected enrollment. And our current enrollment is nearly 1,000 students higher than it was projected to be in 2023. So in simple terms, I don't anticipate BSD to be considering school closures because it does not solve the problems that we're having. Our schools are at a place of fullness that is very comfortable for managing enrollment in classrooms and everything else. I really appreciate that the cuts have been focused first on the central office, with many of your staff taking furlough days this year and helping to lead in providing that protection. I've appreciated also that some of the building staff, the principals and whatnot, have been doing that as well. That will mean fewer administrators and curriculum developers. I know that is where some people often look first for cuts. They say, hey, why do you have so many? I also know those people provide important services, that we have the excellent, strong curriculum and support for our teachers because of our curriculum developers and the work they do and the administrative staff who support them. I also want to recognize that my understanding, at least, is that this is in some ways, we have to do it, but it's also in some ways a worst case scenario. So these proposed cuts are before any legislative changes that might happen this year. We're in the current legislative session. That is the session where they tend to work on budget. As you noted, the big three advocacy may result in increases that may soften or some of these budget impacts. I do recognize that the state budget is also stressed, but BSD is not alone. Many of the districts across the state are facing budget deficits, and it's widely recognized that there is a need to help rationalize the financial funding for school districts going forward. Thanks.
Okay. Director Rogan or Director Aras? All right, Director Rogan.
I'll be brief since talking tends to initiate some coughing on my part. I apologize. I agree this is heart-wrenching and difficult to use words at all right now without having a lot of emotion. We have an amazing district, and it's largely due to the people that serve our students. And these folks bring their heart and soul to our classrooms every day, and I just really feel for the people who are being displaced, and many may be going back to the classroom. So there's a huge part of me that is an optimist, and I am hopeful that our kids will get to experience some amazing assistant principal love, curriculum developer love, and some hopeful reorganization that may create some magic on the tail end of this. I am really hopeful about the partnering with community agencies to support student mental health. I think it's an untapped resource that sometimes in the worst of times, innovation can be materialized in a powerful way. So I'm really hopeful that our students' mental health needs will continue to be met, but just in a more unique and different way. When I was an educator, I was riffed as a result of budget cuts. So I know how this feels, and I just have great empathy for folks that are being impacted by these cuts. Clearly, Dr. Aramaki painted a very clear picture, and I appreciate the level of detail. I appreciate the depth of listening that you and your team have provided for the community. And the severe, for lack of a better word, the severe cuts at central office feels like just a direct relation to that deep listening. And I feel for your team. I feel for some old colleagues and for the assistant principals at the elementary level who are of the highest caliber. I just send deep love and big hope for your future moving forward, and hopefully eventually we can bring them back down the road.
Director Aras.
Let's see. Gosh, this is an emotional topic, isn't it? I would say first, I want to say thank you for doing such a thorough job and creating as many listening sessions and focus groups. And I know you all have been very busy trying to get as much input as possible. And I appreciate you taking all of our asks and our guiding principles in your plan here. This is year number 4 for me. I don't think there's been an easy year. And I feel like every year I have to say sorry. It really sucks. I do appreciate all the effort that's been put into and minimizing direct contact with our students. I know it's impossible at this point. So we will have to, unfortunately, have some kind of impact. I am thankful that you're looking at all the ways we could minimize the challenges, especially mental health, for our students and as much as possible. I do have a couple of, I think, asks in clarifying. I know we've talked about binding conditions, and I noticed that we have quite a few people listening on our meeting today. So I would like for you to take a little bit more time to explain what does a really binding condition mean to our district? What does that mean if the state takes over? How does that impact our mission, our vision, our decision making? What can it do to our current structure and how we operate? Because I think that clarity is important for most people who are not in education, who keeps hearing this phrase recently. And I think there's a slide where you a graph of our expenditure, and I know you put in the 2017-18, where it looks like we have a lot more money than. I think that we need to clarify that that's pre-McCleary. That was the only time we actually had funds. And then we had COVID, and which strained our extra. And I think we need to, people need to understand that it's not that we want hog wild and spending. It is that for the first time, our judicial system said, okay, you met your constitutional demand of actually amply funding education. And that was also the last time. Because that was at 53%, I believe, with McCleary decision. And then the levy cap, I think you touched on how our levy cap was reduced. What was it prior to the reduction and the significant drop? I think if you could explain a little bit of that. I appreciate you having a plan for if we get funding, well, I shouldn't say if, when we get funding from state. Focus on the positive here. I know that there are many in this room, and including myself, we're all doing our best to try to put some pressures and saying that they do need to do what they're obligated to do at the state. And I think we need to emphasize that
the importance that we all take our right and privilege to speak our minds and let our legislators know the importance of them fully funded. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Okay, but make one comment.
Yes.
Just a response, Director Aras. So binding conditions, in the report that I sent out, there is just a part about binding conditions. It's hyperlinked, so it'll take you to the website that explains exactly what binding conditions is. But basically, the definition is financial and operational corrective actions with accountability imposed by OSPI to ensure that we restore financial stability. So we have a plan to restore financial stability, but if we go into binding conditions, we lose some control because they might, like in some districts, they force school districts to reopen their like collective bargaining agreements and reduce pay and things like that. So they, or if a school district has small schools, like what's happening like in a district up north, they are forcing them to close schools. So the decision making basically is shifted from the district and the people to OSPI if necessary. So that is kind of what it is. The other thing I'll just mention is around ESSER money. There is always criticism about how school districts spend ESSER money. And for the school districts that spent it on like facilities things, people criticize because that money was supposed to be for kids. But for school districts like ours, we invested all of our ESSER dollars in staff. And the challenge with that, it was the right thing to do. But the challenge is when you do that, it's very hard to take that money back out. So it is a catch-22 that we get put in when they say invest ESSER in helping kids catch up and help them with their mental health. But then the money ends and then they expect you just to pull all of that back out again. So I will just say, just for people who are listening, who like to criticize school districts about how they spend ESSER dollars, the ones that spend ESSER dollars on buildings is because they do not have the bond money to upgrade their HVAC systems, and that's what they did with it. But for our districts that have the money to build buildings, we used it on staff, and you can't just take when student mental health needs are increasing post-pandemic, you can't just ask a school district to then end all of those things that they tried, whether it's tutoring or mental health support. So with the levy cap, I don't know the exact numbers, but we like over 30% of our budget could have been from levy funding. And now it's, I think, down to 18%. So they really, in the name of funding basic education, they said more money will come from the state, less money can be raised locally. But for school districts like Bellevue, that really lowered the amount of money that we could put into our schools and into our education.
Okay, I think that concludes our comments on these budget reductions on the proposal. And now we would normally have time for director discussion. We're down to about 5 minutes. Maybe, all right. I'm getting conflicting feedback from board members. It would have to be like super quick. I want to take 1 minute and talk about a happy thing, which is I noticed that about those plow attachments, which is something that actually has saved us money. That there was pre-pandemic, we had a snowstorm, we had no plows, and they weren't obtainable anywhere, and people who had plows were charging lots of money, and I couldn't even get to this meeting. It was so many snowbanks, and so the suggestion was made to buy some, and it looks like staff bought some, and now we're not hearing about those problems. So that was a good use of some money that we had a long time ago. Okay, let me pass it, but be quick, very quick.
Sure. Couple of, I guess, happy moments. I had a chance to go visit Medina and their multicultural fair, as well as Tilcum Tai and Jingmei and their Lunar Festival. And I have to say, I appreciate all the staff doing all the wonderful work of celebrating community and sense of belonging. kudos to everyone who pitched in. It was wonderful to see everyone dressed up in their own heritage clothing at Medina and trying all this amazing food. I do want to bring up to attention that WASDA's their annual position due date is in April. So between now and April, we need to come up with, are there things that we want to propose to WASDA, especially given everything at this point. So please do think through, and if you have ideas or positions, let me know. And as a board large rep, I know that it is my responsibility to weigh in, but I do want to let you all know, and I've said this before, that each one of us, everyone, including people not on this board, can weigh in on all the bills that are being proposed. And you don't have to make a comment, but you can weigh in pro or con. It's pretty simple. And I think at this point, every person who can weigh in, it will be powerful. Thanks.
I'll go real quick. I wasn't going to say anything, but because this is about students, I want to celebrate them and really appreciate the picture that you showed of Ruby Bridges. I got a chance to hear her speak last year, and it was just such an inspiration to hear her story. And just wanted to express my gratitude for all of our Black leaders, both locally and worldwide, for all their contributions and sacrifices that have been made that we all benefit from. So I wanted to say that. And got a chance to attend the Sammamish High School Talent Show last Friday, and it was really great. We have some really talented kids in our district, and the theater was like 3/4 full people. And so it was just so nice to see the kids engaging with their cohorts and with their parents and families. And there's no place that I would have rather been on a Friday night than with those kids. So I'm so glad that they invited me. And then also had a chance to attend Medina's multicultural event with Director Aris and Director Block. And I have a picture to show you all here. And we got a chance to eat some amazing food. And I was so full by the time I left. But it was just so great just being in community with families and students and just having great conversations. So I wanted to share that. And then last thing, I also wanted to really shout out the students over the past week and a half or so who I've had a chance to meet and connect with, just to share their experiences and give some feedback and some suggestions on how their experience could be improved and how kids coming after them might benefit from additional supports and things. And so I know that they're incredibly busy, and I just wanted to shout them out and thank them for their time. That's it. Thank you.
I love this, that you have a photograph to showcase. I'm inspired. I wish we could do this more often. Maybe we should. I just want to give a shout out to Jing Mei. I was there with Director Aris this afternoon for the quintessential Lunar New Year Assembly preschool through 5th grade performances by grade level. And it was one of those classic feel-good moments of total cuteness and talent, and thoroughly enjoyed it. And I wish I had photos to share. So next time.
I'll just say really briefly, I want to thank the drivers, the bus drivers, and the operations staff and teachers. I know that these storms are challenging, and also with the uncertainty of not knowing, is it going to be school tomorrow? Is it going to be 2 hours late? What's it going to be? It's greatly appreciated seeing you guys there in the classroom. I know that's some kids might not love that. They want to stay home. They say it's a snow day, but up for a lot of them, it's really great to have that consistency, and really appreciate your effort.
Okay, go ahead.
This is literally not my time to say anything, but I forgot to mention, well, number one, most of the criticism I get online about the snow days are from the students, by the way. Why aren't you closing school? Like, I'm just like, I mean, I'm not sure that's exactly how they say it, but that's how it comes across on Instagram. But then the other thing I just wanted to mention was I just wanted to make a comment about Nate Block, who came and spoke, and the staff who came and spoke about our LGBTQIA plus community. And so I'll just say, I heard you. Yes, I will put out a statement. But in the meantime, I just want our queer community, our gender fluid kids, our trans kids. It's just such a crappy time. So I really feel for them, and I'm sure they are scared and feel alone. And that sucks. So I just want them to know, if they're listening, which they probably are not, but that I really care about them and that we are a school district that supports them and affirms them and uplifts them. So, and I'm sorry if they feel like we've been pretty silent about it, but it's just, I mean, it is just coming fast and furious. And how do we deal with all of that stuff? And the kids are trying to hold it up and they're looking to the adults to say, like, how are they navigating all of this? And so I just want them to know, if they're listening, that I love them and that we are here for them and that we will do what we can to support them. And absolutely, we have board policies, we have state laws that protect them, and we will do that. We will use that and fight to the very end for all of our children. So thank you for letting me say that.
Okay, thank you. And so we're only a few minutes over time. We're going to go into our break, which is scheduled through to 6:45 or potentially a minute or two beyond that, because if anyone needs to get home that's that's on the board and then logged back in. Otherwise, thank you all for coming, and we'll be having our study session in a few minutes. What? 6:50. Oh, okay. All right. Good enough.